I'm going to show you how to make these tropical key lime coconut bars. If you don't have key limes, we actually have a key lime tree, so we can harvest all we need. But if you don't, you're going to be paying 4 to 5 times more for a key lime at the grocery store than like a standard lime. So I encourage you just to use regular limes if you're trying to be cost conscious. Only the most palate sensitive connoisseur is going to be able to tell the difference. And I'm going to show you a little tweak that you can make that will make regular limes more like key limes as we move forward. All right, so I've picked some limes. I ended up using a total of 9 limes. My key limes aren't particularly juicy. Your mileage will vary a lot. You'll get more juice out of standard limes. So I can't tell you exactly how much you'll need. You'll need salt, baking powder, light brown sugar, standard white sugar, cream cheese. You'll need 2 packs of cream cheese. Don't use the reduced fat or anything. All-purpose flour, 1 pack of the instant vanilla pudding and pie filling. Please use the instant one. Don't use the one that needs cooking. The instant pack has, what makes it special is that it has modified cornstarch. That just means that it has already been cooked. So it's not going to have like the gritty, grainy taste that raw cornstarch can sometimes have. I'm always the first to tell you when there's chemicals that you want to stay away from, you want to avoid, like the croissant dough. The instant pudding packs is really not that toxic. I wouldn't worry about it. You're going to need 2 eggs, sweetened coconut flakes. You could also use unsweetened coconut flakes. Just add like an additional like teaspoon of sugar when we're adding the coconut flakes. Whole milk, heavy whipping cream, a stick of butter, some sour cream. And then for our extracts, you're going to need coconut, vanilla. Please feel free to use the fake vanilla. The vanilla, real vanilla bean pod is like $11.50 in our area. Okay, rose water is the secret to making standard limes taste more like key limes. Key limes have a very, very, very faint floral undertone, and you can kind of mimic this by adding 1 to 2 drops of rose water into the batter. But this is not a case of if a little is good, more must be better. You have to make sure it is only 1 to 2 drops. It's just like one of those, just like how nutmeg is so often used in cheese dishes like souffles. If someone can taste the nutmeg, if they say, nutmeg, you used too much nutmeg. The same here. So I'll show you how to use that. All right, in a mixing bowl, we're going to add 3/4 of a cup of firmly packed light brown sugar, 1 cup of that shredded coconut. We will add 1/2 teaspoon of salt. We'll add 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. And we'll also add 1 1/2 cups of our standard all-purpose flour. And we will mix this very well. Now that butter that I showed, the butter stick needs to be frozen. And ideally you will freeze it for overnight. And we're going to start grating it little by little with a cheese grater. And as we grate about 1 to 2 tablespoons worth of that butter, we'll mix it with the fork. And if you have a food processor, you can do this in the food processor, but I find that this works even better. So once that entire stick of butter has had a chance to grate and be mixed into the flour, we're going to start adding a little bit of ice water. I can't tell you exactly how much ice water you will need. It rather depends on how humid your area is and how much moisture your flour already absorbed. It's going to be somewhere between 1 to 2 tablespoons that you'll gently mix in to kind of make this form a dough. And then you're going to press this into a 9x13 baking dish. I do like to line that baking dish with parchment paper. That way I can just pull it out when I want to start cutting it into bars later. and just use your fork to press it in. If you end up using a little bit less ice water, your crust is going to be a little on the crunchier side, a little more. It's going to be a little softer. So you really kind of can't go wrong. That's going to bake in a preheated 350-degree oven. Mine took 22 minutes. Start checking around 15 minutes. All right, in our mixing bowl, we added our 2 packs of cream cheese, 3/4 of a cup of sugar, and 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt. And we beat that together very well. I can't tell you exactly how many limes you will need because it rather depends on what kind of lime that you use. But I ended up needing about 3.5 tablespoons of lime juice. And then I added maybe a teaspoon of vanilla. I added about 1/2 teaspoon of coconut extract. Coconut extract is a lot more assertive than vanilla, so just go easy. Like we're looking for like 1/2 teaspoon here. And then this is your magic ingredient if you're using standard limes, but I'm going to use it even though I'm using key limes. I like to accentuate that floral undertone in key limes, and I'm going to add 1 little drop of rose water. And if, like I said, if you're using a standard lime, you can add 2 drops. Really make sure it's only 2 drops. That got mixed in, and then we're going to mix in our 2 eggs one at a time. I'm watering my garden as I do this voiceover. There's a lot of stuff to do at Coconut Cottage. We have chickens, bees, a fruit orchard. You will need to scrape down the sides and the bottom of your bowl at least once. Make sure everything gets evenly mixed. All right. So, as I said, this took 22 minutes in my oven. Start to check your crust at about 15 minutes, but we're looking for it to turn golden, especially on the edges. They kind of pull away from the edges a little bit. While this is still warm, you're going to put your filling over top of it. Try to get it as evenly as you can. This is going to go back into that 350-degree oven. We do want this a little bit more set than the standard, like a standard cheesecake. So typically with a standard cheesecake, you want it to wobble a little bit in the center. This one I didn't. So I did allow this to cook for 30 minutes. Again, I will say start to check it around 25 minutes. But we're looking for it to be not to be jiggly in the center, to not be wobbling. All right, in our mixer bowl, we're going to put in that pack of the vanilla pudding. That lovely modified cornstarch is the magic ingredient here. And I'm going to add 1 cup of heavy cream, and I'm going to add 1 cup of milk. Actually, I think I went in with about, normally I'd go in with a cup of milk, but in this case, I think I went in with about like 1/2 to 3/4 of a cup of milk, because I did end up adding about the equivalent of like 2 tablespoons of sour cream. And now I just go in with a touch of vanilla, maybe a touch of the coconut extract. And you're going to whip this up. The sour cream, what it does is it cuts through some of the sweetness and the richness a little bit. So I really ask you to not skip that. All right. Now you can see very quickly, you start to see tracks form in this whipped cream. Now, I will tell you that I did overbeat this a little bit. You have to watch this carefully. It only takes a few seconds. We have a lot of bird baths and feeders and all kind of stuff here at Coconut Cottage. It is a big job. Alright, right about here is where you see is where I started to overbeat it a little bit. So try not to get to that stage. It's better to underbeat than to overbeat. So I don't know if you can kind of tell that it started to look different there. So it still came out fine. It's just, if it's a slight bit overbeaten, it's a little less fluffy and hard to spread. But it's still really good. Alright, this is going to be spread as evenly as possible over the top of our filling after it's baked, and ideally completely cooled, because that way you'll have distinctive layers. But if it's not completely cooled, that's also okay, you just won't have the distinctive layers. And mine was not completely cool, so the filling layer and the top layer kind of melded together. You can garnish this by grating a little bit of the lime zest over the top. Also, cut your limes in half wheels as a garnish. I used little lime leaves also as garnish. Obviously, those aren't edible, but, well, they're not going to hurt you if you eat them, but they're not intended to be eaten. If you don't grow your own lime trees, go over to Home Depot or Lowe's or something like that, somewhere that has a citrus tree, and just pinch a couple of, literally and figuratively pinch a couple of the leaves off. What are they going to say? You can't take the leaves. So yeah, always look to the garden section at these big box garden retailers as a place for you to get garnishes. That's what I would do, but I just took my leaves off of the garden. A word about dessert and sweets presentation. We are in a really health-conscious world, which is good, but we're also in a world that I feel like people feel shamed by eating sweet treats, and they don't want to be seen as indulgent. And if you show up to an event, a gathering, a potluck with cake, it's a lot less likely to be eaten. I can't tell you how many garden club meetings or HOA meetings or things like that I've shown up to with something that was probably not even the most delicious thing that was brought, but mine was completely finished while other people had half of their offering remaining. And it's because they came in with a triple layer, super deluxe, rich, indulgent chocolate cake for a meeting that started at 7 p.m. Whereas I came in with some bars or some squares or something like that. People want something that looks more simple and not overly indulgent. And bars and squares have that vibe. So I try not to serve things in a cake shape, like a wedge cut shape, unless it's somebody's birthday, because of that. And you also have that dynamic in the office, unfortunately, of, I have not personally experienced this, but other women have told me that there's the woman who says, "Oh, I couldn't possibly, I'm watching my figure, I'm watching my weight. I couldn't possibly eat that. Just a tiny, tiny slice. Oh, scrape the frosting off for me." Like, shut the fuck up. Okay? If you want to eat less, here's your slice. I'm cutting it for you. Eat it. Eat what you want to eat and don't eat what you don't want to eat. And, like, scrape the frosting off yourself. And I think that there is, like, some performative piety, or that's not the word I'm looking for, but, and yeah, there can be some catty attitudes toward, and now it's men doing it. Now that the men are into all the looks maxing stuff, you know, mogging. What is frame mogging other than, you know, being catty to other men. So yeah, it's just something to keep in mind when we're making sweet treats for people we like and people we love. Why are we doing it? Because we want to make them happy. And they're not going to be happy if they feel guilty about what they did. Now, I'm all for saying, okay, well, I'm going to indulge a little bit here and then, I'll cut back later there. So if I have a good dessert tonight, tomorrow morning I might skip breakfast, or I might go for a jog, or tomorrow for lunch I might have just a very basic vegetable salad. I'm all for stuff like that, but I don't think that's what's always going on when people are sharing their own ideas about food. I find that this, as a dessert or as a coffee snack, it's great as a coffee break snack, a tea time snack. I find that if you're serving it as a dessert, it goes great after you've had something that is more acidic or definitely not something creamy. So when we had this, it was after Thai food. We made some more soy-based noodles. And it also would go great if you have a not really cheesy Italian dish, something that's more like a red marinara-based sauce and not like a ton of garlic bread and certainly no cream sauces. So this will help balance that out. Any like indulgent and creamy desserts after lighter or more savory acidic dishes. And then if you're going for more of a creamy, like let's say chicken Alfredo, for example, or any like heavy cream sauces, or you had a cheese souffle as your starter, something like that, or your main even, you might want to consider a dessert that is more like an Italian ice or a sorbet. So you could still do like a lime sorbet or lime granita, a lime ice. Well, I hope you try these. Yes, there are 3 steps to it. It's not the easiest dessert if you're comparing it to like Jell-O no-bake desserts, obviously, but it's really not that difficult, and I find that a lot of people like this presentation. So thank you for watching. I hope you try it. Bye.